student leadership and activism with our guest panelists. We are a subcommittee of Plowshares Calgary and are very passionate about peace and justice within classrooms for all grades and ages. Educators for Peace and Justice seeks to collaborate with like-minded students, parents, and educators. We're not just a group for educators. We like to include everybody and have everybody's inputs in our activities on Facebook and our meetings to connect opportunities in classrooms with local communities. Furthermore, we'd invite you all to partake in our Facebook group and participate in the resource sharing that we're consistently trying to do. So anytime you find something that you think is relevant to educators for peace and justice, please feel free to share it with us, as we'd like to continue that community support and spread the message of peace and justice pedagogy. So I will pass it off to Danica and hope you all enjoyed the meeting.
Hey everybody, so thank you for joining us. I am super stoked for tonight. I know some of these student leaders who are joining us, but I don't know them all, and I connected with lots of them through email, and I've had a Zoom chat with all of them. But I just want to say thank you to our panelists. We are so excited to hear your voices, and I know we have a lot to learn from you all. So I'm just going to give, this is my first time doing an online panel, and I think this is most people's first time doing an online panel, so I apologize for any glitches. But I'm going to ask my first question, and then we're going to kind of have a conversation. My first question to our panelists is, who are you and what are you doing and why is it important? So if someone wants to go first. Tanisha, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Hi, I'm Tanisha. I'm 15 and in grade 10 currently, and I attend John G. Diefenbaker High School here in Calgary. I recently got involved in Fridays for Future. I didn't actually know that there was like a group here in Calgary until I found out about it over social media. And I've actually always been really passionate about social justice issues. And I didn't really know where to get started. So obviously I joined this, and it's been a really cool opportunity. I feel like what this organization does is really important because obviously, as we heard, is climate change is starting to like wreak havoc on the planet. Like, for example, Texas right now with all the snow and stuff, that's not normal. So I think that it's really important that we as young people take a stand if the government isn't going to do anything or like take action. And I know that we're just like young and that we're just kids, but if we don't stand up for what we believe in, no one will. So yeah.
Thanks, Tanisha. Nyakier, do you want to go next?
Yeah, no problem. I'll go next. Hi, my name is Nyakier Buong. I'm in my second year at U of C doing bioanthropology. I am a co-founder of a nonprofit tutoring and mentorship program aimed at like BIPOC youth. And what we do is important. I think it's because in university, like the higher you get, like the less representation of like BIPOC students, especially like from what I can see, like the Black community. I think it's really important. Like education is like one of few ways that you can elevate yourself, like socially, economically, and I think more Black children and more BIPOC children in general need to get encouraged to go to university. Yeah, that's all.
That's awesome. Thanks, Nyakier. And your organization is called Golden Meaty, if anyone wants to check it out. Erin, do you want to go?
Sure, thank you. So I actually went to school with Danica. That's how I know Danica. We both graduated. Well, I don't know if we graduated the same year, but we both like finished development studies in the same year. So we did like our capstone together, and that was really great. And so it's nice and to see you today, Danica, and thank you for inviting me. I apologize if my voice is kind of weird because I've been talking all day at work. I do Zoom calls all day long, and frankly, like it really tires your voice out. So yeah, my name is Erin. I'm a Métis woman from Manitoba, Treaty 2 territory. My ancestors are from the Santa Clara area, which is near the Duck Mountains. I am in the, I can't speak, I'm so sorry. I'm the founder and the co-chair of the Foundation for Rural Youth Empowerment, which is an organization that strives for equity in post-secondary education for rural youth across Canada. And I think it's an important cause. I think everyone at FRYE believes it's an important cause. And it's because we really feel as rural students that university is just a different experience for people from rural backgrounds. And it's just not a very recognized challenge. And there's not a lot of supports or like services and supports at university available for these students. So we've taken it into our own hands to try and make that happen on university campuses, and also tried to create supports of our own for rural students and help prepare rural students before they enter university on ways that they can improve their transition experience. So I think that's important anyways. But yeah, that's my.
That's awesome. Thanks, Erin. Alicia, you want to go?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Alicia. I'm 21 and in my 4th year of a Bachelor of Management at Dalhousie University. I went to school to study at Dal. They have a program called Social and Environmental Sustainability. So that's what I'm studying within the Bachelor of Management. I am the founder and co-host of a podcast called The Environmental Podcast, which essentially aims to make sustainability education more accessible to people of all different interests and backgrounds. So we frequently use art, history, politics, so whatever people are interested in, to show sustainability messaging. And we frequently talk about the intersectionality of environmental justice with social justice, so how taking care of your mental health, your community, all feeds back into making a more sustainable future. I have also worked with social entrepreneurship projects, and I'm currently doing my capstone, which is working with a small business in a rural community here in Nova Scotia and helping them grow and become a community hub. So those are all my different focuses right now.
Thanks, Alicia. And Chase.
Hi, everyone. My name's Chase Cardinal. I'm 20 years old. Part of my family is Cree from the Satellite Cree Nation north of Alberta. And I am currently in my 2nd year of an Indigenous Studies and Political Science program at University of Calgary. And I've been with Fridays for Future Calgary with Tanisha as well. I've been in that group since the spring of 2019, so almost 2 years now. And like Tanisha said, I think our group is very important because I think having a youth activist voice in the city around climate change, especially in like Calgary and Alberta, where sometimes the narrative is very harsh against environmentalists, I think it's an important group to have. And the fact that we're run exclusively by youth and students in school, it kind of gives us some credibility in the city, I would say, so that we're not some big organization. We're kind of just a real like grassroots activist group. So yeah.
Thanks, Chase. So that kind of gives us a snapshot of who these people are. And I'm so inspired by each of the areas that all these people work in. I love hanging out with inspired people. And so I'm really thankful that you're all here with us tonight. So our next question is, how and why did you get involved in activism and leadership? Let's start with Chase. You went last. I'll let you go first.
Sure, yeah. So I got involved with Fridays for Future before it was actually even a group in the city. It was kind of when we were just doing weekly strikes initially. One of my really close friends was one of the first people to like start striking regularly. And I joined them because at the time I was really concerned about climate change. And so I started going down to City Hall every week on Fridays. And eventually, as time went on, our group became more organized and we started having proper meetings and essentially building the group from the ground up. And it was really at a good time too, because this is right when the climate movement and like Greta Thunberg was really starting to blow up across the globe. So our group kind of formed at like a really great time, and there's a lot of engagement, and we've been going pretty strong ever since. Even with the pandemic, it's stuck around as a pretty solid activism group, and that's my involvement has been in that. And then I've branched out into other groups once in a while. Like I Don't Know More Calgary, Indigenous rights issues is something that really interests me as well. So yeah.
Thanks, Chase. Alicia.
Yeah, so I've always been interested in activism and leadership, I would say, since a very young age. There was no one inciting incident which got me into climate change. I was thinking about it a bit before this, and it would likely, if any one thing, it was the 2015 Paris Agreement that was signed by a lot of countries around the world. And seeing all the countries come together and try and decide on an agenda that they wanted to fulfill was really inspiring to me, I'd say. Yeah, I'm just a bit like, have always been interested in it and like a little bit utilitarian in my approach to activism. So going into university, I wanted to be a doctor, but then I just kind of explored a lot of different avenues throughout the first year of my degree through joining clubs and such. And then I saw, in like my opinion, climate change is the biggest threat to peace and to human health around the world. So I plan on attacking it from sort of a like social entrepreneurship approach. And so I've been just kind of pursuing different leadership approaches that have given me experience in that avenue since starting university.
Thanks, Alicia. Erin.
Thanks. Yeah, so likewise, like I have always been really drawn towards activism and leadership. I've always felt a calling towards justice and trying to right injustice when I see it. But like the thing that got me motivated to start the Foundation for Rural Youth Empowerment actually ties into my experience in high school, going to a school in rural Manitoba with a population of around 80. So like a very small high school with not a lot of resources available to it. I kind of tell the story all the time about, so I started off in science in university, but backtracking even more, when I was in high school, our school was so small that we didn't have a science lab. So we were actually taught chemistry over like a Skype-like tool. So the teacher was not in our school, the teacher was somewhere else. We didn't have hands-on labs. We didn't really have a super robust science education, but still like students like me wanted to go into STEM when we went into university. And so in my first chemistry lab at UC, what happened actually was that we went in and the TA stood at the front of the room and he said, well, like today we're gonna do a titration. It's a really simple experiment. I know you've all done it 100 times. I'm not even really gonna explain it, I'm just gonna leave. You guys can figure it out. So he just left the room. And then everyone around me started doing the titrations, and it became just very obvious to me at that moment that like everyone else had done this before and I hadn't. And the reason that I hadn't was because of the school that I went to when I was in high school. And so that was probably like the definitive moment when I decided that I didn't really want anyone else to experience that either. So then went on to get more involved in leadership in that area, and then eventually started the Foundation for.
That's crazy. I didn't even think about that in the transition for rural youth into big city universities. That's crazy. Thank you for sharing that, Erin. Nyakier.
Hi, thank you. I think I never really thought of myself as an activist. I think I just kind of like did it. I didn't really like think, oh, I'm here to change the world. I think a lot of the main reason we started our organization is because like back in high school, I felt like really discouraged by counselors when trying to pick like higher level classes like -1 and the classes that will get you to university. There was a lot of hesitation when I wanted to go into those types of classes. And then speaking to my other friends, like my other Black friends, they had the same discouragement, and I didn't think much of it. Like we knew it was a problem, but then going into university, like my first year, and you at U of C, and you look around and you'll be in a lecture hall with 300 students and you'll be the only Black person in the whole lecture hall of 300, and it's just like how how is this happening? Like, what do you mean? And then you look back to this discouragement you got when trying to pick your classes, and you're like, oh, maybe this is a main reason of why a lot of these kids are not here. Like, a lot of my peers, a lot of like my community is not in university with me. And I think the only way to change that is like if you do it yourself. If you're not going to go out there, I don't think if you're not going to go and tell these counselors, if you're not going to go and tell these students who are 15, 14, that they have to fight for themselves, and they have to like maybe even argue with the counselors a bit to try to get what they want and to get the future that they need. If you don't tell them, no one else is going to tell them. Maybe these counselors are not purposely trying to discourage Black children, but maybe subconsciously, and they need to be told that this is a problem and it is like hurting our community. And so we had to do it ourselves if no one is going to tell them that this is a problem, and if no one's going to tell these children that they have to fight for themselves, then nothing is going to change.
That's so powerful, Nyakier. I think that is so important, that we fight for that as a collective, as education professionals. I think that is so important. So thank you for that. Tanisha.
I would say that like a lot of these panelists, I've also been really interested like in social justice issues. Like ever since I was a little kid, I was like super talkative, and I couldn't shut up like ever. And and I think that there was the time that I really like noticed that there needs to be change in this world was when I was like in the 6th grade, and we had to do a research project on like some social justice issue. And I remember going to the UN site and seeing like that organization, I Am a Girl, and then like 11-year-old me couldn't process that like kids the same age as me were getting like sold into child marriage and stuff like that. So from there on, I became really interested in learning more about these kind of things. And then I think that the first time I really got involved with climate change and Fridays for Future was when I was like 13, and I begged my parents to take me to a climate strike. And then after a month, they finally let me go. So I remember going to downtown and then standing with the same people who had the same beliefs as me. And it felt so like amazing to be there with so many other people who had like the same idea, even though we were so different. And then after that, I was like, wow, this is really cool. So for like 2 years, I didn't even know that Calgary really had like a Fridays for Future like group. And then recently I got involved with the group right now, and it's been a really amazing opportunity. And I feel so lucky to be with other people who have the same mindset as me. So yeah.
That is awesome, Tanisha. I love how excited you are. That's so cool. So thank you for that round of questions. We have another question up. So what if you had any, so what opportunities, if any, did you get in school to become a leader? Was there any opportunities for you in that area? Let's start with Nyakier.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to like junior high and high school. I don't think I was in very much like leadership positions, and now that I think about it, I think it's because you don't see yourself in those leadership positions. Like you don't see representation in yourself. When you look at leaders, they don't look like you, and you just feel like, oh, you just don't picture yourself there. So then when those leadership opportunities like come by, you're not going to go for them because you think, oh, they're not for people like me, subconsciously, and it just passes you by. And I think that's why a big part of what we do, especially just us as the board members, being who we are and letting children who look like us see us, know that they can take leadership opportunities.
That's awesome, Nyakier. Did you have any opportunities once you got into high school to take part in any clubs or groups, or you just didn't really realize that was your potential?
Yeah, I just didn't take them. I just didn't look back. I kind of just went to school, did my work, and came home. But now that I look back at it, I really should have like sought out those leadership positions.
Well, I'm really glad you're doing it now and in a really big way.
Thank you.
So that's awesome. Chase.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been pretty outgoing in school, so I always like ended up being the first person talking in a group whenever I was like put into, you had little assignments in school. So that was kind of probably my like forte into leadership when it came to school. Because I was just like, I talk probably too much, and I probably did talk way too much, but I guess it was my practice. And like, I can't think of any specific opportunities where I was like put ahead as a leader and things, but I just always, if I saw that there was space and that nobody else was like taking up a role in something, then I would usually just speak up and start doing it. Yeah, that's sorry. I think that's most of what I have to say. Yeah, I've always liked being like leading groups and stuff.
That's awesome, Chase. And how are you involved in Fridays for the Future now? What's your role there?
Kind of just everything. Like, I help out where it's necessary. I do tend to facilitate a lot of our group meetings just because I don't know, I'm comfortable talking and keeping us on schedule and stuff. But yeah, I pretty much just help out with whatever is needed at the time. And my role has changed so much over the past couple of years. Like, sometimes I've been in charge of media coordination, other times I've helped to organize like specific events or to help with intake. Like, there's just lots of different roles I've taken on.
That's awesome. Thanks, Chase. Erin.
Thanks. Yeah, thinking to high school, I was involved in kind of like the usual things in high school, I guess. Like, there was, student council and yearbook and stuff. And we had like 3 clubs because, like I said, there's 80 students. So you have to double up people. There's not enough people to have that many different clubs. But like, one of the clubs we had was called Youth Philanthropy. And it's an interesting club because now, like, having taken a degree in development studies, I look back at all the problematic things that we did in Youth Philanthropy Club. But I think like the core concept of it was really interesting and inspiring to me as a youth, which was like, if there are problems in the world, you can take steps to help fix them, which I think like that core idea still follows me through to today. And that was really because of certain teachers in the school. Like, that club wouldn't have run without certain teachers. So it was really influential for me as a youth in this rural community to have mentor figures in my teachers who were willing to spend that time outside of class to have these types of opportunities, and who are also willing to like think and say yes first to students who came with ideas and initiatives and say like, cool, like that's a great idea, let's run with it. Even if like all the details weren't sorted out yet, and like helping them through like that process instead of right away shutting them down. I was like the kid that was at my teacher's classroom like every night with like some wild idea that I wanted to do. And like very rarely would a teacher tell me like, that's like stupid or that's not going to work. They were very much encouraging and very much like, that's a cool idea. Like, if you want to see this through, what can I do to help you? That sort of thing. So that was very helpful for me as a youth in a school like that, and having teachers there who would support. But it wasn't always like that. Like, when I was in junior high and a little bit before, some of like the ideas I would have and like the challenging kind of way that I think around some of the status quo that we deal with every day. Like, I often am the person who's like, why do we do things like that? I don't like, that doesn't make sense. Like, this is wrong for this reason. And I was often labeled like a troublemaker when I was in junior high, and I was very much like ostracized by lots of teachers. And it's like a switch flipped when there was a different set of staff. So I would say, like, speaking to teachers and stuff, like, try to be the teacher that's supporting kids, and don't be the teacher that labels kids and that excludes kids on purpose.
That's so awesome that you had teachers who saw your potential and also let your ideas take the lead and drive the conversation. That's amazing. Alicia.
So I'll talk mainly about my experience in high school because I've done a different set of things in university. But in high school, there's a cool program that we have in Nova Scotia called the Nova Scotia Secondary Schools Association. And what it is a group of students who put on leadership conferences every year. So throughout high school, I had the privilege of being a part of that, mainly as a delegate in the beginning. But then as I went along, I had teachers who encouraged me to take on leadership roles in that organization. And with it, I had the opportunity to plan curriculums and execute events which taught students from all across the province leadership skills. And because Nova Scotia is so varied in populations and there's rural areas and urban areas, it was neat to be able to provide opportunities to schools who otherwise wouldn't have had opportunities to develop leadership skills. Also in high school, I was a part of the Rotary Interact Club, which mainly our focus was on eradicating polio for my 4 years in high school. So that was an interesting opportunity to be able to work with an international cause. And that club at school brought in outside mentors to be our leaders. So the school didn't have anyone within it who was interested in running the club, but they were still able to bring in community members who were part of the Rotary Club to mentor us students who were leading the initiatives in our school. I also did a bit of literacy programming in high school. So we went around to elementary schools and basically read with the kids and gave them incentives to read. So we get them to read certain amounts of books and things. Yeah, that was pretty much my high school, my three main projects. And if anyone has questions later, I guess about university, I can talk about that too.
That's awesome that your school brought in community members. I think that's also a really important piece of student leadership, is seeing other people who are outside of that school context come in and share their expertise. So our next question, I didn't miss anybody, I don't think. Our next question is, was there a time when a teacher, parent, mentor encouraged you or discouraged you in areas of leadership? Let's go with Alicia.
Sure. Tanisha, did you get to speak about the last question?
I don't think so.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay.
I thought I was doing good. I did not
It's fine,
intentionally
it's
miss you.
No, it's okay. Obviously, since I'm like just started high school, I really only have like 4 years to kind of take experiences from. So I guess in middle school and stuff and junior high, I didn't have too many opportunities. My school was I would say was like an all right school, but really we had a student council for like 2 years, and then that was basically it. And I think the most leadership thing I could think of was a debate club. So I kind of had to like seek out opportunities for myself, and my parents are really helpful with that because yeah, they really value education and they feel that it's important for like me and my sister to get involved in those kind of things. So I was involved in this competition called Technivation, which is basically getting girls involved with coding and solving a problem in your community. So I participated in in the competition for like 3 years straight, and the second year I participated. We got second place in like the regional competition, so throughout Calgary. Yeah, that's really it. I kind of just really leadership opportunities. I've liked them, but I didn't have too many opportunities, so I do wish there was more. But other than that, yeah.
That coding thing sounds awesome. That's a really cool opportunity. Okay, next question. I'm going to skip over one. I'm going to think, how do you think your teachers, school, parents, mentors could have supported you better, or how did they support you?
I can go first, if that's all right. I had some excellent teachers in high school who supported me through essentially leading by example. They never explicitly would go out of their way to not go out of their way. They would never explicitly say, you should be an environmentalist, you should be a social justice warrior. They sort of lived their lives in a way that exemplified the values that they believed in. And then a lot of students would pick a teacher who they looked up to and were inspired by them, I would say. Some other mentors that I've had did a really good job of connecting students with resources. And the biggest part of that is they always would follow up, because I've had negative experiences with people who I thought could be mentors, and they would connect me with a resource or another person. They said, you should really talk to them, I'm not an expert in this, or you would really benefit from that, but then they didn't follow up. And even if it wasn't their intention, I would always feel sort of abandoned in those situations. So that would be one way that people maybe kind of failed in a leadership role, of trying to facilitate children becoming leaders. Another really big thing that I had some of the leaders in my life were they would always create space for conversations to arise, be it an English teacher or a philosophy teacher. They would just leave space, which sometimes is the most important thing for letting kids explore their interests. And it's like, say you're a math teacher and you can't really shoehorn social justice into that, but maybe you can if you just leave a space in class for a conversation. And that's kind of how you can make your passions relevant, I would say, because some of my biggest inspirations came from kind of strange situations, like in a math class, there's being a gap for us to discuss like inequalities in the community and stuff like that. So yeah, those would be my experiences with leadership.
I like what you said about following up and making sure that you're not just chucking resources, especially at students, that you're also helping them access it and making sure that they're landing and sticking onto those resources. Chase.
For me, I think like something that I've always really appreciated, and I know like, I feel like most people I know hate public speaking, and every time it's like you have to do a group presentation or you have to do something like that, people always get like really overwhelmed with it. But I really appreciate, like, I think back to like elementary school and some of my teachers who really, we just presented a lot and we talked a lot in front of classes. And I had some really great teachers who helped me and like my fellow classmates to become better public speakers and gave us that like platform to do that. And carrying on into high school, I mean, by high school, it wasn't like, I don't know, it's just nice to have those chances to talk and to practice your skills. And then having a teacher that helps to like build your confidence in that and give you like productive feedback is also like super helpful, because I think most of it just comes down to like how you're feeling and if you're feeling confident in yourself. And when you have a teacher that's giving you like, is supporting you and telling you what you've done well and giving you like, you know, not necessarily like not fluffy feedback, but just stuff that's helpful, like, and meaningful. That's always been a huge support to me. And I think that's helped me to feel more confident in myself in taking on other positions and roles in activism and stuff as well.
That's a great point about public speaking and the opportunities to start early in class, because I think as leaders, you need to be able to use your voice, and the perfect place to practice using your voice is in a classroom. Tanisha.
Sure. I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question? I was thinking of it, but just like
no worries, of course.
Yeah.
How do you think teachers, school, parents, mentors, those kind of people in your life could have supported you better, or how did they support you?
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I can think like of a good example. So in 8th grade, I had a teacher, and he kind of like every week and stuff, we would kind of talk about different issues like currently happening in the world, and we would like not really debate, but we would like speak about it and take our opinions. So for me, like being interested in that kind of thing, it was a really good opportunity for me to kind of like explore what I was passionate about and also get input from other students. And a really good thing about it was that our teacher didn't really like make you feel like you had the wrong opinion or something. It was usually it was like not very, well, I don't know if this is the right word, but it wasn't like biased or anything. So having those kind of opportunities to speak with your peers about different issues it's really good, because first of all, you're kind of like I don't know what's like making your speaking skills better, right? Because you have to explain like your stance, but it can also help you find what you think is right and stuff. And I feel like that was really influential in helping me get to here, like helping with like social justice issues. So yeah.
That's awesome that you got opportunities to learn and speak and think in your classroom. That's so important. Erin.
Thanks. So I already spoke about a couple of things. One of them being like supporting students who are from rural communities on their way to university, learning more about how that works. Second being just being like encouraging in general to students and not trying to shut them down, and trying to be very supportive of their ideas, even if they're bad ideas. But I think like one other area that hasn't been explored yet, that I think is interesting for teachers to consider, is something that like I have called in the past like Fisher Price opportunities. And what I mean by that is like opportunities that are designed to be like, they got kid gloves, essentially, these types of opportunities. And I feel like they are very much like targeted towards youth, like whether you're in high school or whether you're in university, like in fourth year university, like I've even been pushed towards things that I feel are like designed for kids, like so that you don't do anything real, but also you don't get hurt. And like, I don't think that like in high school, teachers could be considering opportunities where it's a real opportunity for the student. There can be real consequences to their work, but also real benefits. And I think like one thing that I was given the opportunity to do when I was in high school was participate in the, in the local economic development board in our town. So it was a real group. It wasn't like a children's economic development board. It wasn't like a hackathon. It was like a real meeting. There were real issues being discussed. And my input actually had real value at that table. And I think like having that real opportunity was really important. And so I think as teachers, like if you can think of opportunities for your students that are actual opportunities and not like kid glove opportunities, that's like much more beneficial.
I like what you said about there's real benefits and real consequences, because I think that's school is a great place to learn how to fail as well and not necessarily do things right the first time either. Nyakier.
I think what would have really been a big support to me when I was in like high school and junior high would be if teachers were more aware of like the social and like cultural differences. I think in Canada, we have like a very Eurocentric view of the world, and we don't really think about other people's cultures, especially like immigrants as being like a first generation Canadian. You don't like we can't ask our parents about the school system because they never went through it like at all. They don't know about the different levels. They don't know about the different -1s and -2s. I think these children, a lot of these kids whose parents and their grandparents went to school here in Canada, they've been here their whole lives, have like a huge advantage. And I think if teachers knew that, if teachers recognized that and gave more support to kids who don't have this advantage, to kids whose parents don't know about the school system, it would make a big difference, not just in like taking leadership opportunities, but like in their lives in general, like where they go in the future, what opportunities they take and don't take.
So powerful, Nyakier. Thank you for sharing that part of your story. I think that's so important for teachers to consider as they lead students and connect with students. So for our last question, it's any advice for teachers or mentors or parents in supporting student leadership? And you might have covered it, so you can pass if you don't want to answer, but if you had like one key takeaway for people tonight or one key piece of advice to either your younger self or a teacher you wish you had, what would it be? Let's go with Tanisha.
I feel like I completely agree with I think I'm so sorry if I butcher your name. Nyakier?
Here, it's okay.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, but I completely agree. Like recognizing that kids, like we all come from different places, and obviously being an like a first generation immigrant kid, you're gonna have disadvantages. So I feel like recognizing that like difference between kids, but also presenting opportunities that will benefit us all. Like I guess like yeah, that would benefit everybody would be really good. Yeah.
Thanks, Tanisha. Chase.
One thing that I like a big piece of advice I'd give to any teachers is like having one-on-one conversations with your students whenever you can, and like with different students too. I know sometimes certain teachers, like you get a teacher's pet or something and you'll only talk to one student, but some of my best teachers I've had have been ones that have like intimate conversations with a majority of their classroom. Like they find the time to talk to you one-on-one, even if it's just about like your assignments, and you throw in a little bit of a personal conversation and they're like just figuring out who your students are and what they need. Those teachers for me have always been the ones that I've gravitated the most towards and that have helped me, and I've done the best in those classes as well, where they like I feel a personal connection. And I think that's so important because sometimes teachers will just, class is over and they don't want to talk about questions. They don't want to, have a conversation with you. They send you to go look online for something. And that's not helpful at all. So I really think those personal connections are super important.
Thanks, Chase. That's such a great point, having that individual personal connection with every student in your class. Nyakier.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I have to say like goes along with what Chase says. I think students, a lot of the times teachers focus on like students who are excelling or like doing really bad, and I think they miss the middle students who are not failing, but they're not doing as good as they can be, and maybe they're not outspoken, and maybe they're not going to go out of their way to speak to the teacher. But I think if teachers go and speak to those children, they may have just as much passion as the other students who are like acing the class, but like they just need a little more support. They just need someone to believe in them. I think having someone to believe in you and someone letting you know that they think you can excel, they think you can do great, will like make a big difference in like your life, in every area. No matter what you want to do, having someone believe in you will really, really make a difference.
Oh, you hit it on the nail on the head on that one. I think that is belief in your students and their capabilities, no matter where they're at on the spectrum of things, is so important. Alicia.
Cool. I have a couple points because I like pre-prepared them, and they're points that I tell myself when I'm in a role of an educator. So one is that no one's left-brained or right-brained. That's kind of something that we use to categorize ourselves and our peers, but putting someone in that box is usually a little bit negative for them. I was always put in like the right-brained, like the smart, like math student box, and that never allowed me to see myself as a creative person. So when I'd have to approach a problem from a creative stance, I was unable to. Two would be that critical thinking is like the best skill to instill into kids, especially in the age of the internet, because sometimes it's almost impossible to have our own identity and our own point of view, because we either fall into a sort of echo chamber or our family becomes an echo chamber. So kids need to know when they're on the internet how to distill information, and critical thinking is the tool I'd say is great for that. Three would be fostering tactile experiences. Both of my sisters had this second grade teacher who grew monarch butterflies in the classroom, and then they all released them at the end of the year. And even though my sisters don't super care about the environment all the time, they know everything about monarch like habitats, and if they see one, they won't destroy it. They know not to touch them, and so on. So having even more of those experiences and hands-on things are really like, they really stick with them. And finally would be like, if you make a mistake or even kind of create an opportunity to make it seem like you made a mistake and then you admit it, or you apologize. I think that's like really important because we grow up and we never really see people make mistakes or apologize or admit their mistakes. And that makes us kind of like stubborn and hold on to maybe outdated or not kind things. So it makes people kind of end up in a, like, I don't know the exact word besides like making stubborn people. So seeing people make mistakes is really good, I'd say. And those are my 4 kind of philosophies.
I love that, Alicia. Thank you. Critical thinking is so important, I think, too, with just understanding social justice and the intersectionalities and what you should read on the internet and what you should not. I think that is like a key defining factor that we need to teach these kids coming up through this digital age.
Can I just add something?
Erin, last but not least.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Chase.
Like that point about critical thinking is so important because I, part of my language, but I was a bit of a shit disturber in high school. I was definitely not as like socially aware as I am now. And a lot of that was just because of my family and the, like you said, like the echo chamber of your family you get stuck in. But the teachers that helped me get that critical thinking skill, that's the only reason why I'm here, like doing any sort of activism at all today, is because once I was like on my own and able to look at things on my own, I finally like realized a lot of my opinions were wrong or just misguided. So yeah, I just think Alicia's point was super important about critical thinking.
Thanks for that personal experience of how that has changed your course of life, potentially. That's awesome. Erin.
Thanks. I second everything that's been said. Yeah, I mean, like I've been trying to drop like advice the entire time because I'm like, yeah, you should do this. Having not been an educator, I have no idea how it is, but I'm like, here's all these ideas. But regardless, one thing that actually, like, I was reminded of it when I told the story at the beginning about like my chemistry problem, and like that whole situation for me was really hard. But I do remember coming home at the end of my first year and talking to the physics teacher at my high school. So we didn't have a chem teacher, obviously, but we had this physics teacher. And I told him that story. And I said, like, this happened to me, you know, in my first year of university. And he listened to me and he sat and like really sat with what I said. And then he said to me that like, he doesn't want any one of his students to ever feel like that. And that he's going to change the way that he does his teaching to make sure that that doesn't happen for any of his students. So for me, like, that is really so powerful. And it speaks to, I think, like teachers being lifelong learners, but teachers being receptive to feedback that they get from like the small humans that they let out into the world, who come back and tell them things that are really important, about like, you know, you trained me for this, I went out and this thing happened. So like, how can we stop that from happening to more people? And I think if more students had that mentality, and then also more teachers had that mentality and had that relationship and that dialogue, we might be better off overall. But yeah, so it's like my little piece of advice. I also want to say, like, great job, Danica. You've done an excellent job as moderator.
Thanks, Erin. Oh, I like your idea. It's almost like a feedback loop that we need between students and teachers as they learn and come back and say, oh, this really impacted me, or this was crazy. Why the heck did you do that? So I think that's awesome. Thank you all so much I am so inspired, and I hope that everyone else here is inspired. So thank you for your time and energy. We have a little while left. So if you want to either put your camera on and ask a question to either the panelists or people in general, we have lots of really awesome people in the group here that the panelists, plus I know people who are participants. And if you want to type in the chat, I can read it, and Kira can read it off the chat. So go crazy, ask these amazing people any questions you have while you have them.
Hi, everybody. I just have a question. So we have a K-4 school, and I'm just so inspired by all of you, because it's what you are, what I hope our babies become. And I tell them all the time they're going to change the world. But I'm just wondering if you've given some good sort of general advice. I want you to walk backwards to when you were little, like under 9, and just sort of think about what are some of the things that you wish you had known about or understood better as you were going forward. You know, somebody, I can't remember who, but somebody said whether they didn't really tell me to be an environmentalist or a social warrior, social justice warrior. And I think maybe I do that, but I'm just wondering, what kind of things do you wish you'd had or you wish you'd known when you were coming through younger? Yeah.
I can answer that. I think like a lot of my experiences in life, and I see life differently as like a Black woman. And I think if we were taught more about like Black culture, especially here in Canada, because there is a lot of Black culture that happened in Canada and it's been here for years and we just don't know about it. And it really makes a difference because I have younger brothers who are in that age, that 40K age, and they're learning about like Martin Luther King at school. And when I was in school, we didn't learn about that at all. We didn't learn about anything. And they come home and they're like, oh, we're learning about like Black people at school. Mm-hmm. And it like, they're paying attention. They're really listening in class and they're focused on that subject. Like it really makes a difference to them just to learn about something, even if it's not like a whole unit in class, just even like every now and then, just to teach them about like a Black person in history who's like made it or who's done something really, really makes a difference. Like my brother, he's in grade 2 and he could not stop talking about it all day, about how he learned about like Black people in school.
Thank you. I think that's excellent advice. Mm-hmm. And I wrote it down.
Thank you.
Tanisha is going to take a crack at this question too. Go ahead, Tanisha.
I totally agree with that last point. I wish that I knew when I was younger that anybody could be a leader because like obviously growing up, learning about history, you don't really learn about the people who look like you. Like being Indian Canadian, I never learned about people who like me who contributed to our history as Canadian people, and I really feel that it would be important to know as a young kid that there are people who are like you who made a change in the world, because like now seeing how the world has changed just in a few years, like it's becoming a lot more inclusive and accepting of differences. I think that would have been really helpful for me as a little kid, because it would have been awesome to see somebody who can relate to your experiences and who you can relate to, and then know that one day you could be like them too.
Well, I know where to get people to come and talk to our kids. I've seen you.
Any other panelists want to plug in for that comment or question? Okay, we have a question from Inyan. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm glad that an activity like this is happening. And I think, Nyakier, my question is for you. And the reasoning why is because I think I had a similar experience to what you went through. So a lot of the advice I got in high school was quite discouraging. And I think, fortunately, I had good mentors that were able to push me, and as a result, I find myself going through university and pursuing electrical and computer engineering, obtaining a master's in mechanical engineering, and now in medicine. All right, so if I had listened to all of the advice that was given to me, I would not have taken all the sciences, even though I was I'm interested in doing so. I would not have been able to challenge myself the way that I would have. Right, so regarding the work that you're doing, I'm wondering exactly what Golden Meaty does, in the sense of trying to tackle the issues that you mentioned. I know one was to try and challenge the narrative that some counselors give to students, but what other things are happening with your group?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, at Golden Meaty, when we were in university and high school, me and like the other co-founders were like, what is like the main reasons why why Black children are not in university? Like, why are we not here? Why do we not see ourselves? I think, and we thought to ourselves, two the biggest issues that are stopping us from being here, stopping like my peers and my communities from being here with me, is they didn't have the grades and they didn't have the right courses. And I think the only way to like stop those two issues is to help with the grades, is to tutor. So we started the tutoring program. Kids come in twice a week and they do their homework, and all of our tutors are other university students. So I think if you're in junior high, elementary, high school, to get taught by like a university student, someone who's like educated, is like a big deal. And then another problem was they're not in the right courses. How do you stop that directly? Mentorship. Like, do you tell students, some of our like we have like a grade 12 student, she's applying for university, and she's like, oh, how do I do it? What do I need to take? What classes? How do I apply? And just things like that. Like just having someone to talk to, someone who trusts you, someone who believes in you, that you can go to university, and just direct you in the right way. Like, you need these courses if you want to go to this program, and you need to get these grades. And if you need help, you can come to tutoring to get these grades.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nyakier. I have a question in the chat. It got sent to me. I'm curious to know if any of you have heard, any of you panelists have heard about the threat of nuclear weapons, for they're considered a threat to our human existence and the environment, probably even a greater threat than climate change. I work with a national group seeking to abolish nuclear weapons, and we wonder how to get support from people your age. So if any of you know, or have you ever heard about the nuclear threat, I guess?
I could speak on this a little bit.
Go for it, Chase.
Because yeah, I mean, I've just always thought like war and nuclear stuff was really cool when I was little, and not so much now. Now I don't think it's so cool. It's more scary. But I think it definitely is one of those things that, well, it's just another intersection in the whole, like the scope of problems that need to be solved, so that we have like a habitable world in the future, and also an equitable world at the same time. Because, you know, nuclear weapons, you know, while maybe the threat has like obviously subsided since, you know, a few decades ago, it's still something that's there, and they still exist. And, you know, there's always unhinged world leaders in different countries all over the place at different times. So there's always that threat that exists. And I think through like an intersectional lens, I think for me, like I found that to be the most effective way at educating people on a variety of issues. Because if you're approaching people just talking about one certain issue, like just climate change, or just you know, war, nuclear weapons, or racial justice, sometimes people lose sight of how other factors play into it. So teaching somebody that, you know, nuclear weapons obviously are horrific for the climate. They also, you know, in the event of a nuclear war, probably negatively impact a lot of lower income people, and people that are like, you know, there's probably a class element to it. And then also, same thing like teaching about environmental issues, and how obviously nuclear arms would be a threat to that, and also how racial justice plays into environmental problems. Like teaching through an intersectional lens, I think, is a really great way to tackle those sorts of topics.
Erin, did you have your hand raised at one point, or you take it back?
I did not have my hand raised, but like I was just clapping because I thought that Chase put it really well, and it was actually what I was thinking as well. I mean, it's not directly related to like the threat of nuclear warfare, but overall, like I really like can't second enough the concept of teaching students concepts from the perspective of looking at systemic problems and looking at how systems interplay. One thing that was like really lacking from my overall education was the notion of colonialism beyond a vocabulary term. Like teaching from an idea of what does colonialism mean, and how does it impact literally everything that Canada is today. So taking that same concept and just trying to, you know, expand it to other issues that we face like as a society and as a world. looking at the interplay of systems, I think is a really critical thing for teachers.
That's awesome. Is there any other questions for our amazing group of people here? Tanisha, go ahead.
Can I add to their point? Okay, so I agree with all, like both Chase and Erin. I completely agree. Like everything is connected, and I feel like as an obviously much younger person, like I'm just 15, I see in my peers that we don't, like many of my peers don't really care about social justice issues because it seems like it doesn't affect us. Like we can't see it, it's there, but it doesn't seem like it's there. So I feel like relating issues like nuclear war and stuff like that, you have to kind of relate it and make it seem like it affects us because obviously we know that there's a possibility of war, but it just seems so far away. So if you want to get youth involved, I feel like the way to do it is to make them relate to it and know that it really does affect you and show us that too.
I just got a question in the chat. How have your experiences with the education system changed the way you approach situations, and how have these experiences bettered you?
I guess I can go. I could start with this one. I think my experience with the education system has made me approach it in like a hesitant way, like more critical of what I'm being told and really double check myself and ask for advice from like people who I believe are trustworthy. And I think it is helpful in a way to have to double check and have to look at things and really think them through for my own and also just not taking everything just not taking exactly what they tell me and believing them 100%. It sounds sad, but in a way it's a blessing, like to really have to look out for yourself.
Tanisha, go ahead.
Okay, I also, like, obviously still being in school, I feel like when I was younger, like I didn't really think too much of it. Like I didn't think critically about what I was being told. But if you kind of look at our education system, it's I feel like it's been mentioned before, but it's pretty like Eurocentric and kind of only touches on what people of like European descent, people who are Caucasian have contributed to our country without really like touching on who else was in the background when this happened. Most of the things I learned about Canada now that involve people of color, like Black, Aboriginal, Indian people like of all those kind of descent, it's from social media, and I don't feel like that's the way that it should be coming to us. I feel like I obviously really value my education, and I think it's extremely important for, as like Nyakier, as she mentioned, it's very important for getting ahead in society and raising yourself to a better position. But I think that you kind of have to also take into account that there was people there in the background who helped make it happen. And I feel like if that was mentioned in the curriculum, it would also make us like immigrant kids also feel a little bit more heard, and so that we could kind of relate to our country a little bit more, because even if we've lived here for our whole lives, we'll still feel an outsider. And I feel like that kind of feeling could be eradicated if we were shown that we were included too.
And I just want to say thank you, bravo, because you children, you guys, I'm not going to call you children, but you've grown up with the same curriculum my children went to school with, and they are all easily 1 to 2 decades older than you. So we continue to put children through an education system that has a dated Eurocentric perspective, and we don't update it, how do we expect to get critical thinkers who want to change the world? The only way we can do that is teachers who take risks with it, and we do not have a system that's conducive to that either. So fight hard. We need a whole committee on education. That's what we need.
Peace education.
Just on that point, Lorraine.
Exactly.
Something Lorraine has talked a lot about in the classes I've taken with her about the curriculum and how it's not changing. Currently, I'm doing a research project on how to decolonize the curriculum. Not that I'm not sure where it'll go to, but I'm starting my research on it. But I think it is a super important aspect. And I think having student activists like you guys who can raise their voices and concerns and provide the student perspective as well, because it's not always just about the educator's perspective and what the educators think that we need to be doing to teach our students. We need to know what the students think and what they want and how it's going to help them learn the best. So an amazing job to all 5 of you. But yeah, I think these conversations need to keep happening. Somebody had said that feedback loop between students and teachers, and that just needs to keep continuing so that both perspectives are heard. And then hopefully that'll bring about the curriculum change that I know Lorraine's worked very hard for. And yeah, so.
Without a lot of results yet, but I never give up hope.
Can I say one thing actually on that topic? So interestingly enough, like my mom works for the government of Manitoba in curriculum development. And something that we talk about a lot is like the relationship between populist ideas and curriculum development, and how like voters decide who gets into office, who then decides the policy agenda. And that while it's the important thing for teachers obviously is to educate students, I think as like citizens, it's also important for us to educate our neighbors and like people who decide who our leaders are, who decide the policy agenda, who decide the curriculum. So it's a whole system that I think like is not just isolated towards education, but just overall like how we can contribute to society. So yeah.
And if I were going to give you one piece of advice, I would say stay connected, and because 5 voices are stronger than 5 voices together are stronger than 5 individual voices. So those stronger connections, the stronger they are, the louder they are. And it's going to take a lot of voices.
I just want to say how inspired I am by you all. I've been furiously writing things as you've been talking. As a teacher in training, I really resonated with the fact of feedback to teachers, because in our teacher training, we hear how important it is to give students meaningful feedback, but rarely do teachers get that. So if there is that communication between student and teacher, I feel like it will only improve our practice and, help to build future yous. You guys are very inspiring. So thank you so much.
Is there any other questions for our panelists or people in general? I know we have principals and teachers and superintendents in here with us and parents.
I just wanted to say I appreciate hearing your stories about guidance counselors and kind of not as someone who didn't face what you face, and even Erin talking about coming from a rural community, that kind of you kind of gave me a little brain pop there, because I thought, geez, I've never thought that it would be different for someone, because I was born and raised in Calgary, went to school here, high school, all my schooling, university, the whole bit, work in the CBE. So I've not come from a rural background, and that never would have actually, even in my ancient years, have crossed my mind that would be that difficult of a transition. To come into the city to go to university. I mean, I kind of think of, the obvious, like you're away from your parents and you can't live at home and go to school. My daughter went to university at UBC, and, that's a whole different thing to just go from Calgary to Vancouver, and well, sort of, it was a little different, but, I really appreciate hearing your stories about that, because it's really opened my mind to think back to the whole being in high school and trying to get that help and that support. I'm not sure I had the most helpful guidance counselors. Luckily, the boyfriend I had at the time, who's my husband of many years now, was kind of one step ahead of me. So he kind of walked me through that. But I can imagine that it would make you feel like you didn't have all the information to be able to make the choices is really how limiting that is. And then when you get to university, and where do you go and who do you talk to that understands where you're coming from? So whether that's a rural community, or it's from another culture, or it's from another country altogether, those are really important things to think about when guidance counselors in high school in particular, and even junior high, should be trained in that as well. Like, I'm just thinking about their training. They're not always teaching. They may be in primarily just a guidance counselor role, but who is making sure that they are aware and that they're able to kind of have some empathy and understanding for what you guys have all mentioned, that, you know, for different reasons you've gone through trying to transition university. It's that, I mean, 100 years ago, that was not an easy transition for lots of us, and I wasn't facing any of those things. So I think that should be something that gets brought forward as well when they're training people to work in high schools and junior highs, to make sure that they're empathetic to that, and making sure, I mean, if you don't have parents who've been to university, who's guiding you? I literally had my boyfriend, not my parents, because they didn't go, wasn't a thing in our family. And if I hadn't had him, I probably would not have gone, actually, to be honest. So, you know, I think that's an important thing to consider, that everybody should have that opportunity. And we can say, yes, you have the opportunity, but if we're not giving you the support to get there, the opportunity's not necessarily going to be used to the best that it could be, and save a little stress and heartache along the way too.
Just to that point, I was kind of thinking back to Nyakier's point about mentoring from a university student's perspective. And I think that's amazing work that you're doing, Nyakier, because I know that with my guidance counselor in high school, she had no idea what universities actually required. And I think she was really trying, but I think there was just this lack of communication and no understanding. Like you've all said, and I grew up in a rural community, and my parents hadn't gone to university, and so I had no idea how to even apply or go about that. So I think like having that youth mentorship or student mentorship, and maybe incorporating that with between the guidance counselors and student activists or student mentors, to help encourage students to go to university and teach them that you can do it, and doesn't matter where you're coming from or what background, that the supports are there. So I wonder if there's a way that could be connected between those university student mentors and guidance counselors as part of the training that you mentioned, Ms. Walk. I'm not sure if that's something that would work, but just my 2 cents on that.
I think that the communication is definitely the key there. I mean, if the counselors don't know, or that's not been part of their training, or if you were trained as a guidance counselor 30 years ago, or more for some of us since we've done our training as teachers, things have changed, obviously, and their job is really important in terms of, if anybody needs to be up on that, I would say it should be them, because it's affecting so many people to be able to not go. And I think that sense of feeling comfortable, you know, in my case, I did not feel comfortable being at university, because I felt like somebody was going to come and tap me on the shoulder and say, you're not smart enough to be here. Off you go, right? Like somebody's going to come pluck you out of your chair and take you away. And that was just more my own insecurity that brought that around, but that was hard enough. And I wasn't fighting other kind of battles or issues that some of you have mentioned. So I remember that feeling like I don't belong here. But you wouldn't guess that watching, you know, the little blonde person walking around the university, like something's the matter and she's not feeling comfortable here. So, you know, for lots of reasons, I think kids have issues when they go there, or they've got a lot of parental or cultural pressure to be there, but that's not really maybe what they want to do. I mean, that's just another whole thing as well. So I just think we all should have the opportunity to go, and then to just feel like we're supported in that journey, because it took me a long way and connected me with so many wonderful people. And I'm so glad that I went and have the job that I have. But had it not been for my husband or my boyfriend at the time, I honestly probably wouldn't have gone. So, you know, just helping the kids, not just the smart kids who everyone knows always get the top grades, that you don't need to necessarily be a straight A student to actually get in high school to get into university. I know it's a lot more complicated now, but I think somebody mentioned something about, you know, having a teacher that let you know you could do it, or that was rooting for you, or would encourage you to even explore it. I'm not sure how much that happens. So I think that's important as well.
Thanks, Allison. Nyakier, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I just
and then Chase.
Touch on Allison's point. Like, she said this one thing that was like really powerful, that I thought she said, not we can say that everybody has the opportunity, but if no one's helping you and no one's actually like pushing you towards that way, do you really have the same opportunity? That's what I really thought. That was like a really good point. And I'm not sure who responded to Allison, but they said like, how could we bridge that bridge the gap, like between like us, like university, like youth activists, and like counselors and like teachers. I think more conversations like these is like will really make a big difference. Like, if people don't know the problem, especially like these counselors you say were trained like 30-20 years ago, they're just doing the same thing they've been doing, but maybe their kids are gone, their kids are out of high school, so they're not seeing like the repercussions and like the feedback loop. The kids are not coming back and saying, oh, this, when you did this and this, it helped me, and when you didn't do this, it really made a big difference. So I guess more conversations.
Totally. Chase, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this whole conversation just reminded me of when I was first entering high school. I don't know if this was the first year this program happened, but we had a dedicated, I guess the title of it was like a graduation coach for Indigenous students at our school. And I was put in contact with this person right when I started. And it kind of reminds me of what Nyakier's been saying about like having a mentorship sort of thing. And that's what it was, because it was like a culturally relevant guidance counselor, essentially, for the Indigenous students at the school. And I know for me, that was like a huge help, because I saw some of the regular guidance counselors, and there was just certain things that they didn't like understand, or they just assume you know certain things. And I have parents who, you know, didn't go to university, and you know, there's just like a history with, you know, especially Indigenous students, like residential schools and not receiving proper education, that having like a culturally sensitive graduation coach was so important for me going through high school and getting into university. And I feel like that sort of a program like that, where you have that culturally trained counselor, but expand it even beyond Indigenous students, would be super impactful. And I mean, obviously, I think there's also room for regular guidance counselors to improve as well, because everybody needs good guidance, regardless of your, you know, culture or background. But I feel like there's a lot of room where guidance counselors can be helpful as well. Except I know they cut all the funding for that program and it doesn't exist anymore, which is kind of unfortunate, because I know my younger brothers don't have that anymore. So it is a shame that that's happened, but that's our current government for you.
That's really cool that you were able to get that support, Chase. That's really important to have that culturally relevant piece to it. Tanisha.
I just want to add on to Chase's point about having somebody culturally relevant. I totally agree with that. I feel like somebody, it doesn't even have to be like the same culture as you or same race or whatever. Just somebody who's there and who believes in you, like we've been talking about. I feel like that has like a humongous impact, because the teachers I remember are the teachers who helped me become like the person I am, and who encouraged my interests and didn't make me feel stupid when I asked too many questions. They just kind of like, they encouraged that kind of, they encouraged my curiosity, and I feel like that's super important. Like having somebody that you can relate to, like just not seeing them as a teacher, just not seeing them as somebody who's there doing their job, but somebody who you could reach out to when you need help. I feel like that's super important, and you need that relationship between teachers and kids. Otherwise, like I don't think that kids would be interested in pursuing higher education or stuff like that.
These are all great points. I feel like we need like a whole other like 6 hours and like a round table with paper and whiteboards and all these things going on to solve all the world problems. But we are going to have to pause for tonight, but maybe we'll have you all back on or have some mini interviews or something, because this is such a fruitful conversation, and I am so thankful for it. And I am inspired when I go back into my classroom tomorrow to continue doing this work, and reminder of why it's important and why we should be doing what we're doing. So thank you all from the bottom of my heart, sincerely. I appreciate your time and your effort and your energies. Yeah, we hope you join us again on March 15th with Pam Davidson, who's the superintendent of Calgary Girls School. We're going to be talking about female empowerment. So hopefully it will be another really inspiring conversation. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy your night.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Tanisha.
Thank you for being here.
So honored to be a part of this. Like I was like, really me? Am I?
Yeah.
Enough, but now I'm here, and I'm really happy that I did it.
Yeah.
And
thank you so much.
We'll stay in contact, everybody, and maybe we'll keep the conversations rolling and see how we can all collaborate and work together. Because I'm really excited, and I'd love to keep the ball rolling.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Erin.